All right. So tonight, in case you are hiding under a rock, you'll recognize my guest, Cole the Bear Thompson from SEC Unfiltered. One of my favorite podcasts and one of my favorite sites to go on. Love these guys. So I'm very pleasure that he will give me a few minutes of his time to do a quick interview for Greenville Sports Media. So Cole, I'm going to hop right in because I know, like I said, you got an early morning. So I'm going
Yeah.
to hop right in, just ask a few questions. I let y'all introduce yourself, but like I said, dude, everybody already knows you anyway around here. So all right. So man, I'm going to go ahead and get started, man. So I'm going to jump right into this. So basically, man, you spent years doing traditional beat writing.
Yes.
Um, so what was the catalyst for going into making that leap to SEC Unfiltered, and how has that creative freedom changed how you cover the conference?
So I actually have a background in radio and broadcasting. So with sports talk radio, you go about it in a different way than most traditional journalists. You're allowed to be a little bit more outlandish. You're allowed to have some bold opinionated takes. My approach was always coming from a journalistic background where I'd have a strong take, but I'd be able to back it up with evidence. I think that that's always been like kind of the way that I've gone about things. If I can prove it, that's always going to be priority number one. I don't just want to be saying the outlandish stuff without having at least a theory or a thesis that's put into mind. But when you get into podcasting, you have to teeter this line of understanding that you're entertainment number one, but you're factual entertainment if you want to do this job right. And so the beauty of what we do at SEC Unfiltered and what I've been able to bring, I think, to the table alongside with Chris Phillips is you're going to get very intelligent, well researched, and very balanced takes that come with an understanding of nothing I say is with malice, nothing I say is with ill intent. I have no disdain toward any organization in the SEC. I'm calling it as is. And I used to have a radio show called Just Saying It because of I would simply just say it. It didn't matter if I was living in the city of Houston or San Antonio or Dallas or Chicago or on the road. I just would say what was on my mind as long as I was able to back it on up. And so I think that with the traditional media background, you get a good understanding about being able to follow a pathway of this is what is supposed to be the way that you cover media and the way that you cover athletes. But with podcasting, you're allowed to go ahead and have a little bit more of a jubilant personality. Maybe you're allowed to have a little bit more passion because of when you get in an argument with a Texas A&M fan, you're getting in an argument because of both of you are seeing something that you're either frustrated at or you're really excited about. Where in traditional media, you have to come at it with with a completely unbiased take. You have to be basically neutral field no matter what. You're not allowed to interact with the fans in terms of how you go about the overall persona when it comes to certain matchups, certain key elements. And when you build that fandom, you start to maybe lean a little bit more into the tropes that go with it. So it's a very interesting process of how we got here. But I love the fact that I came from traditional media simply because of it allowed me to get a good gauge of how to report, how to tell people what I'm doing, build a rapport of where when you come to me, you understand that I'm talking to people in the industry. I know what I'm talking about, but I'm doing it in a way to where there maybe is a little bit of fandom, a little bit more of a personal feel. We're SEC fans at the end of the day talking with SEC fans,
I
even
mean,
though that I come with a background with it.
and one thing I can say, man, when I watch your takes, I don't even know who you're a fan of, which I think is
Yeah.
like what specific team you're a fan of. Like Chris, I already know his background, so I already know where he comes from. Watched him whenever he was doing podcasts on his lunch break at work. So, but I mean, like I said, with you, I don't know who you're a fan of. So
So
I
the way I get away with it, Mark, is I say I hate all 16 teams equally in the SEC. And then when someone calls me out, they're like, "Well, which team do you hate the most?" I always just point them and go, "I hate your team the most." So that way, it's like I come off as like an unbiased person, and it really is just coming from a place of what I'm seeing on the field, what I'm seeing when it comes to covering the sport. I'm doing it from a place of not malice or like, oh,
right.
well, you went to so and so school, so that means that you're supposed to hate that university because that's what you were raised on. It's like, no, trust me, I'm married to a Longhorn and I went to Alabama. I will
Right.
call both those schools out as much as I call out Vanderbilt, Auburn, Tennessee, Texas A&M. I'll do it because of it's okay to say that you went to a school, but you can also see the problems that reside ahead.
Absolutely. I'm a Penn State student right now. I'm probably the oldest one senior right now. I go to Penn State and I'm a Gamecock fan. So, I feel you. I did get the pleasure of watching Penn State play Clemson, so that was a kind of easy one in the bowl game for me to root for. So now we're gonna pivot a little bit. So, you recently launched the morning drive, you and with Dan and Cole on
Yes.
Houston Sports Talk 790. If y'all do check it out. Um, so how do you flip switch from being the national SEC expert at night to being the hyper local voice for the Astros, Rockets, and Texans at 6 a.m. in the morning?
A lot of caffeine, a lot of adrenaline, and maybe a big cold slap of water to the face is probably the best way I can do it. No, I mean, like I grew up in Houston, so I have ties to the city. I moved around a little bit before I came on back and officially established my roots here. Um, I have a good understanding about of relaying what it takes to actually connect with the audience. And I think the beauty about what I do with SEC Unfiltered is I get to figure out in kind of a puzzle way with playing detective what every SEC fan wants to hear. What are things that they need to hear and what are some things that I know will get attention. And it's just like doing the exact same thing here in Houston, where naturally, however the sports season goes, it really helps benefit you. Astros play really well, Rockets play really well, Texans go to the playoffs. You lean into that while also calling out things that you want to do with your job. But it's a good balance of learning from fan bases that maybe, have a certain degree. Kentucky, basketball, Alabama, football, Mississippi State, baseball, you get a good gauge on how to be able to react with them on certain sports and how maybe they're going to handle it differently. So it's a fun balance because if you never know what type of call you're going to get, you never know what type of person you're going to deal with. You give your take, and then at the end of the day, you just kind of gotta let the phone lines be open and just go ramble ahead and just steer into the skid of whatever's coming your way. And that's kind of like I think the beauty about being able to work from a national perspective is you'll get a comment saying you did one hell of a job breaking down what this team is. And then 2 hours later, doing another video, they'll say, you're an idiot that has no idea what he's talking about. I hope that you never come to my city because I cannot wait to call you a dummy in person. And like that's kind of the beauty of what it is with radio is that you give and take and you learn how to do the dance and you figure out every caller is going to be a different personality. So I've done a really good job of being able to balance this landscape of the callers and the people that I get commenting on videos and they leave voicemails on our Chewing Clock podcast feed. How they respond is a good way for me to be able to balance and understand how I'm going to deal with a person on radio in Houston. And when you get a really good co-host as well, it always helps benefit it because sometimes you get to play the bad guy. Sometimes you get to play the smart villain. Sometimes you get to be welcomed in by those people. So it helps that you have a really good cohort that you can just bounce ideas off of. He'll call you out when you're an idiot. He'll tell you what's a smart idea, what's not smart. And I'll kind of talk you off of the ledge. The beauty of what works with our industry, especially with Chris and with Dan in different ways, Icarus flew too close to the sun and he had somebody to catch him on his way down. Sometimes I get to be the one flying close to the sun. Sometimes I got to be the one catch them on their way down.
Well, one thing I figured out, man, with SEC Unfiltered, your partner Chris don't have no problem being the villain.
Nope,
So
not at all.
he never has. That's one thing I can always say. Even when he was doing just South Carolina, he had no problem being the villain with his own fan base. So I've always thought that was kind of cool. So you got a good partner with that one. Now since with SEC Unfiltered, now you interact with some of the most intense fan bases probably in the world.
Yeah.
So when you aren't working, can you still watch a game as a fan, or is your professional brain permanently ruin the experience of actually enjoying a game on Saturdays?
Mark, I'm going to be completely real with you. I have been told by family members, by friends, by colleagues, when we go watch football games, you're sitting at the other table by yourself because I don't need you to ruin this for me. And it's in every single sport because of the way my brain works is it's too analytical of seeing how a play unfolds,
Mhm.
seeing how certain concepts work. And I'm calling them out. They're like, I don't need to be told on how we lost the game. I just want to feel the pain of when we lose the game. I don't need to be told about what were the best 3 plays of the matchup that allowed us to get a victory. I just want to go out, have a nice cold beer, and celebrate the victory. So like it's a blessing and a curse because of like on one hand, I feel very confident talking about all 16 teams in football in the SEC. I feel very confident about where each team is, what works and what doesn't. But at the same time, I have to kind of celebrate this quietly because if I go out and I explain what goes wrong, I'm either going to get slapped in the face, I'm going to get thrown out of the car, or I'm going to get told you're walking home. And so it's like, you got to pick and choose your battles when you do these type of things.
I feel you there. Like I said, I'm kind of not as big of not as a big of an angle as you because, like I said, I don't have 81,000 followers on a podcast. But you know, my wife tells me the exact same thing, man. Say, you know, because I'm always trying to analyze everything. So I feel you. So we're gonna jump a little bit into football now, SEC football. Just a couple of quick things on that. So this year, the SEC, they're launching 9-game conference schedule. Um, so which of the mid-tier programs do you think are most at risk of having an actual losing season simply because they're not able to schedule the cupcake games on their schedules?
I mean, South Carolina is an easy one only because of you have to look at where the roster is right now. You're coming off a 4-8 campaign. You have a quarterback that you think is going to be able to take the next jump forward. But you also have a new offensive coordinator, a new offensive line coach, a new running backs coach, and a bunch of new pieces that are coming in via the portal. You don't know if they're going to hit. And so when you don't have continuity returning to the roster and you look at that schedule and who you face off against, there's reasons to believe, yeah, this could be a very, very, very long season if we don't at least come out the gate swinging. Doesn't mean that you can't get there. Doesn't mean that you can't reach the level of, well, you know, we're going to be a 7-5 team, maybe a couple few upsets here and there, but it's going to be a long season. Arkansas, for me, dude, is the one that I just circle every single year and say, what did they do to Greg Sankey to award them such a schedule of pure hell and disdain? Because it doesn't matter who the coach is, who the quarterback is, what moves you make in the portal. They just seem to draw the short end of the stick. I mean, Mark, they open up in week 2 against Utah on the road at Rice-Eccles Stadium, and it's probably going to be a night game on Mountain Time Zone. So we're already talking about like an 8:30 kick. The following week, after playing all the way out in Salt Lake City, you get to come on home, and your reward is facing off against Georgia. And then you get to go ahead and face off against Texas A&M, Tennessee, Vanderbilt. You luckily get a bye week after that. But then Missouri, Auburn, South Carolina, Texas, and LSU to close out the year. That's your schedule. And so, like, when you have a brand new head coach that's coming on in that doesn't really have a lot of the resources, that doesn't really have a lot of the overall construct set in stone with NIL deals, it could be a very, very, very long season if an injury occurs, you lose morale inside the locker room, start to get a little bit of people quitting at the wrong time. It happens way often than I care to admit, and it's a scary thing. I'll tell you a team that I do not feel jealous for whatsoever in year one, and it's not because I don't think they can be a good team. It's just because of, Mark, their schedule's brutal. I mean, you talk about Kentucky. Kentucky is one that I think that a lot of people are looking at. Will Stein, great hire. Smart move to go bring in an offensive, innovative guy that comes from a background of working with quarterbacks from the Power 4 level that all went to Heisman Trophy finalists or college football playoff berths. Mark, they play Alabama in week 2. And then afterwards, they get to go on the road and they get to face off against Texas A&M, a top 10 Texas A&M team.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, they get to face off against South Carolina on the road, and then LSU, and then Oklahoma, and then Vanderbilt. And then thankfully they get a bye after that daunting part of the schedule. And they close things out with a Tennessee team that may or may not have its starting quarterback in Joey Aguilar back. Florida, that I think is going to be one of the more improved rosters in college football. Missouri on the road, which we have no idea who they could be. And Louisville. And Louisville right now, whether or not you want to say it's like, oh, a great team or a bad team, they're considered a top 4 team in the ACC.
Right.
And last season, they beat you 49-0. I mean, like, that's what happened. So, like, there are teams that with this new 9-game conference schedule, the difference of being bowl eligible and sitting at 5-7 or even 4-8 really comes because of you're not getting that matchup against, say, Mercer or Chattanooga or Louisiana Tech. Or we can be a little bit nicer and say Louisiana Monroe from the Sun Belt or something along those lines. You're not getting that G5 team. Now you got scheduled against a Power 4 opponent. Oh, and on top of that, you also got to welcome on in another team from the SEC that you don't know which one you're drawing. You could be getting a really good one like Alabama that is playing with house money and fire, and it's early in the season. You could be getting a Mississippi State team that, much like every other roster, you don't know what to expect from them.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said about Will Stein, I think everybody was talking about the Florida hire, and I think it was a sneaky good hire. I think it was really good, but I think it's going to take time.
Yeah.
To build something in Kentucky. But I mean, Stoops, for all of his shortcomings, showed that it can be done. It's just like I said, I think it's going to take him a little bit of time to build on that. Um, Now, so you've been really high also in previous takes on the 2026 quarterback class coming out of the SEC.
Yeah.
Um, Between Arch Manning and Lenore Sellers, um, who do you think has the highest ceiling in the NFL?
From an NFL perspective, it's really interesting because, like, you get a quarterback that's 6'3", 240 pounds, that can basically truck you, and also have the ability to throw it 55 yards down the field with the flick of a wrist. That feels like the more upside player, and that would be Lenore Sellers. But Sellers is in this really weird pattern of he'll have more reps and more games under his belt than Anthony Richardson. But just because you have more games doesn't mean you're a more polished player. The thing with Sellers is that there still is so many raw intangibles to his tape where you would love to see him hone in on a lot of the little details just to feel confident that he is going to be able to make that next jump to the NFL with these and not have to worry about going to a right system that has stability on the offensive line and improved number one and number two wide receiver. You want him to kind of be able to take the game by the horns and just kind of
Mhm.
run with it. Where I think that Arch Manning last season was very rocky to begin his tenure. He had a
Mhm.
lot of miscues. He had a lot of errors. It felt like that he was in over his head, largely because of you put up what was a very limited first season. And then also on top of that, all the preseason hype that was never warranted. And people like me and Chris did not follow the Paul Feinbaum approach and said, let's go ahead and give this guy actually a little bit of ease to kind of weigh his way on him before we crown him the next big time name in college football. It showed. But by the season's end, the mistakes that Lenore Sellers was still making were ones that Arch wasn't. And I
Right.
think that that's really where we're at the difference. If Arch only continues to get better, footwork, mechanical decision making, timing, tempo, rhythm when it comes to throws, pocket awareness, situational, tuck and run situations, more knowledge of the playbook, you'll feel like that he is probably a more ready-made quarterback for the NFL that still has all the same upside as Lenore Sellers. Where Sellers, he may end up being a project, but it's a really intriguing project where if you get the best version of him, we're talking about a top 10 quarterback. I think just because of where the game is going right now, the frame, all the other things that just kind of go with what we witnessed his first 2 years, Sellers has the higher upside. But if you ask me in a 3-year snapshot, which quarterback do I feel more confident putting up the better numbers, it would be Arch Manning as of this point. But again, it's not about if you get in the right situation and you're able to kind of tweak those little details, that's all that matters at the end of the day. And I think that Sellers has those traits that you're born with. You don't get taught.
Right.
Nobody is teaching 6'3",
No.
235-pound, quarterbacks to be able to pile drive past a linebacker and still get it in the end zone. You either have that gift or you don't.
See, I think with Norris too, and like I said, I'm still really high on Norris, where a lot of the Gamecock fan base wanted to
Sure.
jump off the bandwagon, which that's what Carolina fans do. That's what we've been known for. Fire our coach after the first year, bench the quarterback. Um, but like I said, with Norris, so I think he didn't really look comfortable in Mike Shula's offense. Mike Shula wanted him to be a pocket type of passer. Dow Loggins kind of let him do the Russell Wilson type of thing, kind of cook. Let Lenore's go out the pocket, let him scramble more, stuff like that. And he just didn't really look comfortable with Mike Shula. Hopefully, Kendall Briles' offense can, bring out the best in him this year. Out of the South Carolina Nittany Lions, that's what I'm calling them right now because they brought half of Penn State's coaching staff with them too. So I'm hoping, but we'll see how that goes, man. So we're gonna jump into baseball now for you, man. Because I know that's coming. So I want to talk about that. ACC, I mean SEC baseball. I'll be covering the ACC this year with Wake Forest. So, but I love SEC sports. Um, Tennessee post Patello with Josh Ellender as taking over at Tennessee. Do you expect the Vols coach to remain as aggressive as it was? Do you think it's going to be like a passing the torch type of thing, or do you think they're going to be entering into a period of rebuilding?
I think it's going to be a mix, Mark, if I'm being real. Texas A&M is, I think, a good case study to look at because they also lost their manager, but they kept a lot of the talent in place when Jim Schlossnagle decided to head on over to Austin versus staying at staying in College Station. So they did the internal promotion with Michael Early, and they said, we're going to go ahead and try and run it back with the current roster we have. And they go from being an out or two away heading into the ninth inning of winning the College World Series to missing the tournament the next season, surprisingly of all, against Tennessee. So Tennessee, I think, could learn some things about situational awareness, where it comes to your pitching staff, little details about where your overall organization is. The thing that really, I think, helps Tennessee is they lost Tony Vitello. They did not lose the coaching staff. They lost one guy
Mhm.
and they kept everyone else in play. And so when the Aggies lost Jim Schlossnagle, they lost their pitching coach Max Weiner. They lost a couple of other guys that were on the staff. And then Early came back and he brought one coach with him. But a lot of the internal things that they had to do was built around him having to build his own staff. So Tennessee probably will still be a tournament team. They probably still will be a team that you look at and say, multiple players that will get drafted in the major leagues, still have a very good pitching staff. They still have a very balanced, I think, overall roster. They may just not be the favorites to go ahead and win the SEC, especially when you have what Texas is doing and when you look at what Arkansas still is. And then
Mhm.
surprisingly, you bring in a guy like Brian O'Connor to go on down from Virginia to Starkville, Mississippi,
Right.
and what he's been able to provide in terms of the stability of the transfer portal players. They're going to be once again a threat. I think that Mike Bianco and what he builds out in Oxford is always going to be something
Mhm.
that you have to watch for. So Tennessee will be a team that, they'll make the tournament and they'll probably even be in the running to potentially host a regional. But I'm not putting my money on them to be the team that we are talking about the most in the SEC. Alabama has a top 3 player in Justin LeBron coming on back in.
Right.
Mississippi State has one of the best middle infielders and one of the best power bats in the SEC. Texas is Texas. I mean,
It
Texas
takes
A&M,
us.
Texas A&M landed a transfer at shortstop that is supposed to be a potential 30-30. I mean, a 20-20 guy. So, I mean, when you
Mhm.
add all that together, there's going to be more teams I think out there that are aggressive. Doesn't mean that Tennessee can't be as aggressive alongside them.
Yeah, I kind of you talk about that, but I go back to South Carolina whenever they also tried this with Ray Tanner leaving and passing it off to Chad Holbrook. That how that fell off also. So they could hopefully, in their case, they don't end up like South Carolina did because they still are struggling to try to gain back those Ray Tanner years in baseball. So I think it remains to be seen. I think it's gonna be interesting to watch.
Sure.
Um, so now with the SEC tournament going to the 16 team elimination format, um, do you think that's going to help or hurt teams like Vanderbilt that relies mainly on deep pitching rotations to win the tournament?
It could. Again, if we're talking about just the overall tournament, it could hurt them. Because you still have Florida and what they do. You still have LSU, fresh off a national championship. Like the SEC is a deep conference, Mark, and it's
Yeah.
really at this point turned into a location where, yeah, we could talk about the Big Ten now running college football because they have 3 national titles in the last 3 years. But at the same time, the SEC remains a pivotal force when it comes to baseball, and they have. So
Right.
you're gonna have to, I think, now more than ever, be complacent during the regular season and gain as much traction as possible to have a winning record that you don't have to worry about the tournament. Because if you are right, in a single elimination 16 team format, yeah, Missouri, they're going to be a one and done most years. They're probably not going to win that many games. Kentucky may or may not be that competitive. Auburn may be taking a step back with what they're losing in terms of the offensive personnel.
Hmm.
But you don't want to run the risk of, well, we're sitting on the bubble and Vanderbilt ends up losing because of they used all their pitchers in the first round. And then the second round, they face off against a team like Florida. They face off against a team like Arkansas. And then it costs them an opportunity to go even further. So now more than ever, I think the regular season does have much merit to where you want to guarantee your spot is almost locked up and secured before you even go to Hoover.
I agree 100%. I agree 100% on that one. Now, one last thing about baseball, and do you think the Longhorns move to the SE has permanently shifted the recruiting advantage away from the traditional big three of LSU, Arkansas, and Florida? Do you think that that's shifted any?
To an extent, yeah, but I think it's more so because of Texas is one of these programs that can easily say, "What do you want?" and then write you a check and go, "Here, have a nice day," and call it even. Like that, like that's Texas.
Right.
And that's going to be in every single sport. People talk all the time about what's the difference between the SEC and the Big Ten when it comes to football. And I say, more often than not, the boosters and the buy-in from them, quite literally. You have so many boosters that live in Big Ten country that come from very rich pockets. And if they want a certain player, all they got to do is go, here you go. We're going to go ahead and pay for you. And Texas can say that where a lot of programs can't. And even with all the money and resources that go into Arkansas baseball and LSU baseball and Tennessee baseball, and you can go as far as say Vanderbilt baseball as well, Texas can match them on any single offer. And they also have, and the other thing that Mark that you got to look at is they have a proven coach like Jim Schlossnagle. When he went to Texas A&M, he went to Texas A&M because he wanted a challenge after 18 years at TCU.
Right.
And when he was at TCU, every 3 to 4 years, college World Series bound, very, very, very balanced roster that featured one or two guys that would make it to the major leagues.
Right.
Good all-time Big 12 shortstop in middle infield. He was building rosters that were competitive. And so now you get him to go reunite with Chris Del Conte down in Austin, where they have their NIL ducks in order, where they're able to go ahead and continue to recruit at a high-end level. And the best part is that when you have a proven track record like Schlossnagle does, just from a winning standpoint, you're keeping a lot of kids home. So they're not looking at LSU as much. They're not looking at Arkansas as much. And that SEC logo does mean something to them. So it does affect them, but it affects every program because of what you have in terms of resources that most schools don't. And that is having one or two big-time boosters that love Texas baseball that will say, I want this pitcher. Well, so does LSU. What are they offering him? Add an extra 0 to that, and let's see what he says.
I got you, man. Like I said, I think I couldn't agree with you more, man. Like I said, Texas has the resources that not a lot of us have. So,
Yeah.
I want to shift one thing back because, like I said, back to football for just a second.
Sure.
The whole thing with you've been a big proponent of Pete Golden.
Yes.
Now, Pete Golden's been in the news with the whole thing with Dabo. Now, do you lie on the side of that's Pete just trying to play the game the way the landscape of college football is now, or do you think he may have crossed the line a little bit with the whole thing with Dabo? If you had a chance to watch his press conference of texting a player while he was in class,
Yeah.
or whatever, where do you lie on this? Is Dabo just far behind and needs to catch up, or did Pete cross the line, or is it a little bit in the middle?
So I lean a little in the middle. Here's the thing. You all should know at this point, Dabo is probably the last person that you want to try to pull the wool eyes over. That's just kind of it. Like, when Dabo says that he's following the rule book, he may not be playing within all the lines, but he's playing within most.
Right.
And so he is not afraid to come with receipts. Like, this is somebody that you do not want to cross in bad territory. And so Pete texting a player, it feels like a little bit too far. Like, this is why you go out and you have a GM. This is why we have agencies. This is why we have people that are supposed to be point of contacts for it. So that way you don't get your hands dirty in what is the legal tampering period in today's day and age. When you're doing that, you're reaching into the cookie jar and it's at 1 a.m. and you know that you have a dad that is sitting on the front lawn with the shotgun ready to go ahead and pull the trigger. You don't go ahead and make that mistake.
Right.
And Pete made that mistake with a guy like Dabo.
Right.
The problem is that there's nobody to regulate it. And the thing with it more so is that because of it's cross conferences, you can't have a guy like Jim Phillips go ahead and say, we're not allowing this to happen. And Greg Sankey, what do you expect him to say from the standpoint of the SEC? This is an all SEC potential linebacker that's going from Clemson down to our school and going to make us look better. And I'm supposed to now tell Pete, No, don't do that to Jim Phillips's rosters. Like, no, that'd be wrong. And the worst part is that, they're so, I would say, there's a right word for it. I don't want to come off as wrong because condescending is not the right word, but they cross up their words, and they're very much they very much can't stay in their own lane when it comes to a lot of these negotiations, because Jim Phillips is over here screaming how unjust and unfair the SEC is stealing a player away from Clemson. Meanwhile, your ACC champion Duke Blue Devils are watching their best quarterback and their star wide receiver head on down to Miami, fresh off of winning playing for a national title.
Right.
But you're not saying anything about that. Meanwhile, Greg Sankey's over here being counterproductive and going, it's wrong that we have people tampering in today's day and age of college football. When Lane Kiffin is telling people after Principal Ewan Manley-Ellen and TJ Daugherty have deals in place with Ole Miss, hey, I'll pay you more, get out of your deal and come down to Baton Rouge once you enter the transfer portal. And so, I'm completely against it no matter what. I think there is a fine line of when an announcement is made, when pen is sealed, when the ink is dry, when the graphic is thrown up on social media. You should no longer be allowed to tamper with those players. And that goes for any single school in the country. LSU to Ole Miss to Alabama, Alabama to Wake Forest. If a player is signed, they should be signed and off limits. But there's nobody to regulate it. So, Mark, the bottom line is that, yeah, Pete's going to get a slap on the wrist from Greg Sankey, say, don't do it again. Jim Phillips is going to be really mad. The way I would describe it is, do you remember in the movie Inglourious Basterds at the very end? Yeah, at the very end, you hear Aldo say, you'll be shot for this. And after he kills Hans Landa's henchman. And he goes, nah, I'll get chewed out. I've been chewed out before. That's Pete Golding. And that's going to be Manny Diaz. I mean, not Manny Diaz. That's going to be Mario Cristobal. They're going to get chewed out and then told, don't do it again. Right. And then they'll probably do it again and they'll get chewed out another time. But nothing's going to come of it until you get regulation from the NCAA level, which you won't get until everybody plays under the same umbrella, which we never will have.
Exactly. I think that this right here, he not only was he signed, he was already enrolled in class.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's just taking it to a whole new level. But like you said, man, there's no regulation, so everybody's just doing whatever they want. But that press conference with Dabo, that was fascinating though, because he laid this thing out minute by minute by minute of every text message, every email, everything. So if you didn't see that press conference, it was definitely something to watch.
No, he did everything you need to do in terms of bringing receipts and not leaving any stone unturned.
I agree. One last question for you, man. Cold take with you. What is the one prediction that you made in the last year that you'd love to have back? And what did that miss teach you about scouting the SEC?
Man, miss. Okay. Miss is interesting. Because hit was really fun too. So my biggest hit to where I thought that I was cloud nine confident. I said Ole Miss will be the team that everyone is talking about at the season's end.
I do
because of it's a year where Lane Kiffin has no expectations. And I just remember thinking to myself, watch Lane spend millions of dollars to have a team that goes 9-3 despite being the best roster he's ever had at Ole Miss. And then when everyone forgets about him, he'll go on this epic run to the playoff. And it happened. The worst take I had this past year was I had a lot. I had a lot. Which again, it's part of the business. You miss. There were two that I instantly regretted. The first one was Vanderbilt will go right back to being a middling 6-6 team. Diego Pavia, for as good as he is, you can't carry a roster single-handedly at a place like Vanderbilt to a 10-win season. Yes, you can.
Yeah.
And quite literally, the reason why I was so poignant on Diego Pavia and what his accomplishments were as much as Indiana can rely heavily on Fernando Mendoza for who he is, they still had a very solid roster around him. If you take out Diego Pavia, this is probably a 3-win team, a 4-win team. That was the value of him.
4 or 5 wins at best, yeah.
I said that the combination of Jaden Baugh and DJ Lagway will make Florida a sleeper to go to the college football playoff. And that was one that I felt confident in because of I grew up. So where I live, it's about 30 minutes away from where DJ Lagway played in high school. So I got to witness him in high school and just see what his overall potential, size, frame, radius, footwork, mechanics. I thought he was a can't miss player, and he still might be, but the confidence was shot. But I thought going into this year, full off season, QB1, not splitting reps. Watch out for Florida to be this team. Billy Napier learned from the error of his ways. You went out and you made some moves. I really did not allow him being the play caller affect my decision. And I remember getting in an argument with somebody who's a dear friend of mine in the industry, and they said, I understand where your brain is. Billy's not changing as a play caller, and he cost them games last year. And I figured, okay, you'll see some change. No change. And I think that midway through that South Florida game, I had to realize this is going to be a very long season for the Gators. Like, yeah, they may end up going 6-6, but they are not a playoff team. They are not a team that's going to be a dark horse. They are going to be in a world of hurt if Billy does not change it. And a week later, we saw the same offense out there against LSU, and you were saying, okay, the writing is on the wall. We're done.
Well, see, even the year before when Billy Napier kind of caught fire for a second, saved his job for about the 100th time in a year in the same season.
Yeah.
They were winning games despite Billy Napier, not because of Billy Napier, truthfully.
Right.
And so, that's the way I look at it. Is they weren't winning anything because of him, because he was still doing the same stuff, poor clock management all the time, poor play calling. It was still the same stuff. They were just winning despite him, and it kind of just caught up to him last year. So, I do remember those takes. So I'm gonna go ahead and give you the pass on that. One last thing for you, because I gotta close out with a Gamecock question. Which one's the first to be gone, Paul Maneri or Shane Beamer, or both?
Well, Maneri may be gone before the start of the college football season, so that's just probably the right answer. I mean, I am a big believer that Beamer is going to find a way to steer the ship back into an 8+ win season this year, which will buy him one more season.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that, Mark, you live on a roller coaster out in Columbia and in Gamecock country. The war chickens every year. It's this. It's we're going 8-4, and then we're going 4-8, and now we're going 9-3, and now we're going 5-7, and now we're going 10-2, and going to be in the college football playoff, and now we're going 3-9. And at some point, especially with the new athletic director with Donati coming on in,
right,
you may be willing to take 4 years of 8-4 rather than have 1 year of 10-2, 1 year of 7-5, 3-9, 3-9, 10-2. You may just want to get some stability and traction there. But I think Maneri is probably going to be gone after this season. So simply because of the timeline, I think it's going to be Maneri.
So I think too with Donati, he is kind of like whenever a new GM comes into the NFL, he has no ties to any of these guys. He's going to want him to bring in his own people, I believe.
Right.
So I think him and Beamer seem to have a pretty good relationship. I think Maneri was a terrible hire in the first place. Truthfully, I thought that was kind of a lazy type of hire. Myself. I think the first one is going to be gone before all of them is probably going to be Lamont Paris, probably. Truthfully, I mean, South Carolina may be just revamping their whole athletics department, truthfully, after this season. So, I mean,
you may not be wrong.
So, only one that's safe is Dawn Staley. But, all right, Cole, I'm going to let you go, man, because I know you got to get up early in the morning. I do appreciate it. I know you gave me a little bit of extra time, so I do appreciate that from you, man. This has been a blast. Like I said, I will be checking you guys out, like I said, religiously throughout the baseball season, especially. If you want to catch my man Cole, it's on SEC Unfiltered. Also, catch out his radio show as well. He's very interactive on his social media on X also. So Cole, appreciate you, my man. And you have a good night and have a good show in the morning, my friend.
Anytime. Thanks so much for having me, Mark. And remember, I hate South Carolina as much as I hate every other team in the SEC. Except if you ask me if I hate South Carolina, I say I hate your team the most.
Well, hey, man, I appreciate that. You keep hating them, man. All right, buddy. You have a good night.
You too, man.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate that, buddy. I appreciate you giving